Welcome back, everybody. Another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast, a little Tuesday Auburn Undercover podcast, but a really special one and honestly an interesting one at that. We're recording it, really not sure how it's going to go, but I think we have a good idea in mind. I think we have a good blueprint laid out, and I think hopefully it should work out really well. Joined today by Phillip Dukes and Jason Caldwell. Guys, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be drafting the rest of Auburn's class. Auburn currently holds 5 commitments in the class of 2024 in quarterback Walker White, running back Jamari and Burnett, tight end Martavius Collins, and defensive backs Amon Lane and Jaden Lewis. So the context of this is we're drafting guys to join them. We don't need to draft those guys. Those guys are already a part of Auburn's class. Don't need to worry about them at all. We're going to be drafting roughly kind of what we, based off Auburn's board. Look, we're not drafting Dylan Raiola. We're not drafting the number 1 overall player in the 2024 class. We're drafting guys that have visited Auburn, have legit interest in Auburn, keeping it roughly realistic. There might be some unrealistic picks here and there, but I don't think we're going to pick, a guy like Jalyn Mbakwe is my example of, the 5-star DB committed to Alabama who Auburn hosted for a visit this spring. Seems like Auburn's going to get an official visit, but we don't think Auburn's nearly in it as much with Jalyn Mbakwe as they are with Perry Thompson, who I do think we will see during this draft. So roughly realistic. Keep that in mind. Also keep in mind these aren't our predictions necessarily for them to end up in Auburn's class. This is just kind of a fun podcast style where we can draft out Auburn's class, see how it shakes out. And then also, if you want to see it in story form, I'll have that as well tomorrow. I'll write it all out, who we all picked, the positions of what Auburn's class would look like. And I'll put all those into the class calculator. And then you'll be able to see how Auburn's class would have shaken out in the 2023 cycle in terms of, total points. So to get started, I'm going to lead it off. I'm going to let Phillip Dukes go. First overall pick, joining the class. Dukes, who do you have? I think what we'll do is we'll go, make a selection and talk for 45 seconds or a minute or so, kind of why you made that pick and how he fits into Auburn's class.
So with the first pick in the Auburn Undercover, dream class for Auburn, the Phillip Dukes casual flexors are going to select Joseph Phillips of Booker T. Washington and Tuskegee. I think Phillips is probably, in my opinion, the most important, recruit or target right now on the board for Auburn. He's a guy that's down the street, phenomenal player. He has the size you need at a position of need. Right now, edge or that jack position, the edge rusher, being able to get to the quarterback is probably the most, the biggest position of need right now on Auburn's current roster. He goes about 6'3", 225 pounds. He's got plenty of room to get bigger. Good-looking kid. From what I'm hearing, he's really personable. I haven't had a chance to meet him yet. His tape is phenomenal. Christian, actually, or it was either Christian or Jason was like, hey, dude, you got to watch him. And when you watch him, he pops off the screen, makes all type of freakish plays. And I think that he's somebody that you have to have being in a 10-mile radius of Auburn. And I think he's the linchpin to this class.
I actually love that pick. That was a surprising first overall pick. But in terms of Auburn, in terms of, we were talking about potentially doing a podcast of must-haves. He's right there at the very top for me because Auburn was his first offer, grew up an Auburn fan, has been to Auburn the most out of any school, and he's literally 20 minutes down the road. If you lose him to Georgia, that's a pretty significant loss, in my opinion. So I like that pick, Dukes. Jason, we'll go over to you for the second overall pick.
Yeah, I'm staying close to home too. You start this high on the board. You're talking about positions of need, and I thought the position was right on the target with Auburn. You're looking at an edge rusher. I thought another position of need is wide receiver, and so I'm going Cam Coleman with number 2 pick. You look at physical skills, a guy that Auburn has made a priority, in a place where Auburn is definitely wanting to get a foot back in the door again. In Central Phoenix City, Cam Coleman's a guy that he checks all the boxes, and you start talking about what they're looking for. You hear Hugh Freeze talking about catch radius, all the things that he's looking for at that wide receiver position. Cam Coleman is one of the guys in this class that does that, but because of where he's located, right here close to home, I would have Cam Coleman really high, and so I'm going to take him with my first pick, number 2 overall.
Yeah, the motto has been flip the script. If you want to talk about a recruit that would be really flipping the script for Auburn, it would be landing a 5-star wide receiver from Central Phoenix City. So that's a great selection. I was hoping you would pass on him, but I knew there was no way you wouldn't. Now I'm in a tough spot because Dukes, I really thought you were going to take your guy, KJ Bolden. And so I want to take him, but I also want to get Perry Thompson on the board as well. And I think that's who I'm going to end up rolling with. The secondary is in a good spot. You already have 2 commitments, and Jason just touched on it. Wide receiver is a huge position of need in this class. The last time you can point to a true impact wide receiver 1 at Auburn is probably Seth Williams. And even at then, it's not like he was good, but he wasn't a truly dominant, didn't go on to be a successful NFL type guy. And that's what Hugh Freeze has had in his wide receivers in the past at Ole Miss. DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, household names in the NFL, and guys that Auburn and Hugh Freeze needs to start producing at Auburn. And Perry Thompson would be right up there at the top of the list. Another in-state 5-star wide receiver committed to Alabama, visited Auburn quite a few times, and he's been pretty hot on Auburn. So it'll be interesting to see. You always exercise caution when it comes to Alabama commits, but Perry Thompson feels like a guy that this Auburn staff has made a pretty big push for and sits in a decent spot. To start off round 2, Jason, I'm going to kick it back to you.
You look at positions of need, and there's no question we've seen from Hugh Freeze and Jake Thornton the push on the offensive line, wanting to improve and continue to improve that position. And so for me, I'm going offensive line with my first pick of the second round. I'm going Jameson Riggs. I think it's a guy that gives you a ton of value, really high up, a guy that can play tackle, could probably slide inside and play guard, even center if you wanted them to. And so you start talking about positions where Auburn has continued to improve. All you have to do is point to your 2 rivals. You look at Alabama and Georgia. Nobody has recruited the offensive line better than Alabama and Georgia in the last decade. And it's no secret that they've been the most 2 consistent teams in not only in the Southeastern Conference, but in the country almost. Them and Ohio State. Speaking of recruiting the offensive line, Ohio State has well, and so I think Jameson Riggs is a big one, and I think Auburn would get a huge benefit from a guy like that. So I'm going Jameson Riggs with my first pick here in the second round.
Dukes, I'll let you go second.
Okay, yeah, well, my second pick, I'm going to stay along the defensive line, just understanding how important the trenches are, and being good up front allows everybody else on the defense in order. It allows everybody else on the defense to be successful. When you got speed guys that listen run around, when you've got linebackers, they have to stay free and keep guards off of you, and you got to be able to get to the quarterback. With all that being said, my next pick is Justin Green. Justin Green is, and I think with my picks and what I've been trying to do is think realistically as well, right? Like we prefaced the whole draft with, and I think Auburn sits in a really good spot with Justin Green. I talked to his pops not too long ago. I had a really good conversation about what he's looking for in a college. And he wants somebody that's going to be straight up with him. And I think the straightforward approach that Auburn has been taking has been paying dividends. I look to see them back at Auburn sooner than later. He's a player that can play up and down the defensive line. If you need him to rush the passer, he can. If you need him to maybe give you more of a pass rush on third down from an interior position, he can also do that. Really well-built young man, and I think he would be a great addition to Auburn's class.
Okay, did not think this guy would get to me by the end of the second round, but he can't slide any further. I'm taking KJ Bolden to end the second round. Look, I mean, this is one of the biggest freak athletes in the class. Top 10 player as a safety, would probably be a top 100 player as a wide receiver as well. Those of you guys watching on YouTube, you can see the picture. I mean, the picture is with Auburn's offensive wide receiver staff and the secondary staff. Auburn has pitched the idea of getting snaps on both sides of the ball to him, partially as a way to kind of get boosted in his recruitment, I guess you could say a little bit, and get a little bit more involved. And so far this spring, from everything that we've been hearing, it seems like Auburn, he released a top 15 at the beginning of the year. Auburn wasn't even in his top 15. Now I would say Auburn's kind of on the short list of, anywhere from 5 to 7, somewhere like that. The new rule of unlimited official visits going into effect on July 1st kind of changes things. It makes things a little more difficult to track on where kind of schools actually stand. But, Dukes, you had it in your Scoops report last week, and that was before when they were just capped at 5 official visits. You thought Auburn would get one of those 5 officials. And I would probably tend to agree with how things have been going with KJ Bolden. So I'm going to add him to Auburn's secondary class there alongside Jaden Lewis and Amon Lane. And huge, that would obviously be a huge pickup. We think Auburn's trying to still catch up ground there, but kind of slowly starting to work its way in and in a good spot. So that wraps up round 2. Jamison Riggs, offensive lineman, Justin Green, defensive lineman, and KJ Bolden in the secondary. Dukes, I'll kick it back to you to lead off round 3.
To stay in the secondary, I think you got to have Auburn likes to have guys who can be very versatile, play inside and out, have good speed, and are willing tacklers. And I think the DB that fits that mold the most is Jalyn Crawford out of Parkview. I think that he's a guy that he really excels in the box, but he's shown on the 7-on-7 circuit this spring some of his long speed and recovery ability. So I think he's an excellent cornerback for this type of what Crime Dog likes to do. Coach McGriff, and I could see he's a player that I could see play safety or corner in college, but I think he'll excel in that nickel role. And as far as 4-2-5 or a true 3-3-5, however Auburn wants to set their alignment, I think he's somebody that can be a weapon, and that's why I think he's a great start to the 3rd round.
Jason, I'll let you roll with the next pick.
Yeah. I was going to
say,
you've been stuck at the bottom, so you pick second.
Okay. Linebacker is a huge need for Auburn in this class, and I think it's time to probably address that. And I mean, you might as well take the top guy that's seemingly on Auburn's board right now, and I think that's probably Demarcus Riddick, the in-state 5-star at Chilton County, committed to Georgia right now. But Auburn and Alabama are pushing for him, and it's going to be an absolute battle between all 3 of those teams. Obviously, Georgia kind of leads right now with his commitment, but Josh Aldridge has been pressing Demarcus Riddick pretty hard. Got him in for junior day, got him in for spring practice. He was hoping to make it for A-Day, wasn't able to make it because of some family obligations. But Alabama's been pushing really hard as well, so that's going to be a really tough battle. But when you look at the linebacker room, it's an older room. You've got a little bit of youth there, and Demario Tolan. Now that you've added him, you've got Robert Woodyard, you've got Powell Gordon there as well. But a lot of those guys, you brought in Austin Keys. By the time this class gets here, Austin Keys would only have 1 year of eligibility left. Cam Riley is running out of eligibility. Wesley Steiner is running out of eligibility. All these guys are kind of upperclassmen now. And so linebacker feels like a big need. This is certainly not the last linebacker we're going to see in this class. I think Auburn will probably take at least 2, if not a 3rd linebacker, depending on how the class goes. So I'm going to go ahead and take Demarcus Riddick.
Yeah, good pick there. To round out this round, round 3, I'm going to stay on defense. We've already seen one edge rusher come off the board. I think it's a position where Auburn has to go at least 2 deep at that spot. I think it's one of the most important positions on the field, and you see those guys get paid in the NFL for a reason. And so I'm going with Jordan Ross from Vestavia Hills. You look at what that true classic speed edge rusher, you pair him with Joseph Phillips, and then you can start to do some things defensively that Auburn has done the past couple of years with Derek Hall and Echo Leota and having Romello Hyde a couple of years ago. You can put a couple of those guys on the field on the same time, especially on 3rd downs. You've got something to work with then. And so I think you look at potentially, kind of the old school, they called it that rabbits defense. You look at having potentially guys like that where you end up moving a Keltry Falk inside at 6'6", 285 pounds down the road to have – you got the potential to really get after the quarterback. And so I like Jordan Ross here. I think that that's a very realistic get for Auburn, and he's a guy that has as much upside as anybody in his class, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You know what, Jason? I'm going to have you go back to back, actually. You can lead us off for round 4 as well if you're ready to roll.
Yeah, I'm ready to roll. Auburn already has a running back in this class, but there's a home run hitter in this class that's still out there that Auburn is in the mix with, in Kevin Riley. And I think that's the spot where you start talking about the mixture of guys in a backfield. They want to get some different touches for different types of players. And you bringing in Jeremiah Cobb this year, Jeremiah Cobb's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. But you look at Kevin Riley. Kevin Riley is a home run hitter. And if you have one of those guys in the backfield paired up with a guy like Jamari Burnett, who's a big, powerful between the tackles kind of guy, that gives you a really unique running back room. So I'm going to go with Kevin Riley here at this spot.
Dukes, I'm going to jump in here and take this second pick. Jason already took who did he take on the offense? Jamison Riggs. And I'm going to take Daniel Calhoun, one of the top offensive tackles in the country. They're out of Georgia, who Auburn has slowly tried to get back into the mix with. He actually visited Auburn quite a few times previously, but Auburn kind of slowly faded out of his recruitment, which is not that surprising of a trend given the situation there. But the new staff has put a focus on him, got him in for a spring practice, which seemingly went well. Again, everything's all finicky now because of the new unlimited official visit rule starting July 1st, but it kind of felt like Auburn was in a position there to land that 5th official. He already has 4 scheduled. And Daniel Calhoun is just an absolutely massive body there at offensive tackle. He would be a guy that could potentially compete for playing time right away. You have older guys there at tackle right now, and Gunnar Britton, who only has 1 year left. You've got Dylan Wade, who has 2 years left, but he could maybe potentially go to the NFL after this year if things work out well. So you'd be adding Daniel Calhoun, who currently is listed right around 6'7", 355, which is something Auburn would love to have at offensive tackle. So I'm going to take him to keep shoring up that offensive line room.
That's a great pick. Calhoun is a guy. I mean, he's an absolute dude, and I always like to say he's one of the first people off of the bus. Absolute specimen. For my next pick, I think, Jason, help me out. What year did Julio Jones and A.J. Green graduate? Was it 2009?
Well, it was – they were in that first class in 2008. Saban came out, and then I think his first year was 2009. I think he was he a sophomore on that 2010 team.
Yeah.
Tuscaloosa. I remember going to watch Julio play in the spring before his senior year, and I think he was part of that first class for Saban. I think it's 2008.
Okay. So, and I remember all the talk being about the 2 wide receivers in that class, which were, what flavor did you like? Was it A.J. Green, who was more of a rangy catch radius type guy, makes all type of phenomenal catches, and then you've got the T.O. like Julio Jones at the time. And I think we see that iteration again this year with Cam Coleman and my next pick. What's my guy's name? I just caught from Foley. He's from the same Julio. He's from.
I took him in the first
he's already
round.
off the board.
Oh, you got him? All right. Well, with that being said, I'm gonna go with Bradley Shaw. I'm going with Bradley Shaw, the linebacker out of Hoover. He's really well put together too. I think linebacker is you need more than one. I think you'll probably need 2, possibly 3, depending on what Auburn happens after the portal, and we'll see what goes on. But yeah, Bradley Shaw is a guy who can cover all across the field. He will hit you. A smart player, really instinctive, and he also I like the way that he's there before he has to be there. And what I mean by that is the way he diagnoses plays allows him to play even faster. So yeah, I will go with Bradley Shaw as my next pick.
Good one. Need some linebackers. I like Bradley Shaw a lot. So does 24/7. We have him higher kind of than just about anybody else. Very just instinctive player there at middle linebacker. I'm going to lead off round 5. We've already gotten, I think we're at round 5. Yes. We've already gotten Justin Green on the defensive line. I'm going to take an in-state guy in Jeremiah Beaman. This is one of Auburn's undoubtedly top defensive line targets. And he's an interesting player along the defensive line. I don't know how to describe his play style, in all honesty. He's a tweener in some sense, but I think you could almost put him not at jack, but you could put him as a defensive end. You could put him at defensive tackle, even with what he currently kind of sits at weight-wise, and he would be able to do it really well. We saw him at the Under Armour camp. They had him lined up almost as a true defensive tackle, and he was just shredding through the guards and the centers and not really having an issue at all. So I'm going to take Jeremiah Beaman. It's been a while since, not been a while, but Auburn has not had the dominant forces alongside or on the inside of the defensive line like it did when it had Derek Brown, Marlon Davidson, kind of those guys. And Colby Wooden has been pretty solid. Marcus Harris has been pretty solid. But if you manage to land Jeremiah Beaman alongside Justin Green, you'd feel pretty darn good about the inside of your defensive line. Dukes, we'll toss it to you for the second pick here.
My next pick will be I'm gonna go with Fletcher Westphal. Did anybody get him?
Nope, that's a good one, though.
Okay, I'll take Fletcher Westphal. I really like his game. He's that classic prototypical offensive tackle build, 6'6.5", maybe. I think he may be 6'7".
He's all of 6'7". I can tell you that from seeing him in person.
Yeah, he's long and from that Virginia area. So maybe Hugh Freeze has some background as far as recruiting him or just seeing him play as when he was at Liberty. But he's what you need as far as somebody who can pass set. And he's got a surprisingly mean streak from what I've saw as far as on film. So I think he would probably, let's say, if you compare him with a Daniel Calhoun, you've got your offensive line set for years to come. So I think he fits really well in what Auburn wants to do.
From my pick in this round, I'm going back to wide receiver, but I'm going back to a guy that I believe is a great fit to pair with the two big receivers that Auburn's already added. I think Mario Craver is a guy that is an absolute just dynamo from Clay Chalkville up just outside of Birmingham. And you look at what he brings to the table, and it's very serious to Javarius Johnson that Auburn has right now. You're looking at how you want to fit those guys. And I think you're looking for a guy in the middle that can eat up space, can create mismatches. And I think he does those things. And so you pair up, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Mario Craver. You had three top wide receivers from State of Alabama in the same class. And I think all of a sudden you make people sit up and take notice. And so I think that would be a really intriguing trio. I know one thing, that there'd be a guy in Little Rock, Arkansas, that would be smiling from ear to ear if those three guys all took this class.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was debating next round between him or Bryce Kane, similar player out of Baker. Both really good options, whoever Auburn ends up with. Guys, before we get into round 6 and 7, let's do a quick recap, just in case people have lost track a little bit. And if you're not watching on the YouTube, we have like the little kind of thumbnail at the bottom where we go over the round. You're able to see it. But in round 1, we had edge rusher Joseph Phillips, and then the pair of wide receivers in Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. Round 2 was the versatile offensive lineman Jamison Riggs, defensive lineman Justin Green, and DB KJ Bolden. Round 3, we had another DB in Jalyn Crawford, and linebacker Demarcus Riddick, and edge rusher Jordan Ross. Round 4, you got your second running back for the class in Kevin Riley. You got an offensive tackle in Daniel Calhoun, and you got Bradley Shaw. And then in the last round, you just got another defensive lineman in Jeremiah Beaman, an offensive tackle in Fletcher Westphal, and your slot wide receiver in Mario Craver. So with that, we'll go to round 6. Dukes, I'll let you go ahead and lead us off here at round 6.
So for round 6, I'm going to go with what I feel is a traditional Auburn type guy. Sometimes at Auburn, you just got to have those guys who may not be the prototypical size. They may not be the highest ranked guys. And this guy would follow a tradition with D'Angelo Barber being my pick. And he reminds me so much. He's got a lot of Zacoby McClain in his game, around about 6 feet. He'll hit you. He's really aggressive. And I think the biggest thing is that you can tell I would say, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, he seems like the type of kid that wants to be at Auburn. And I think in recruiting, you have to get some of those kids who are going to be the guy who wants to get the flag and run around the field. There's a lot to be said for how that would impact the culture of the team off the field. And I think he's a guy that Auburn would be really lucky to get. And if they choose to press, I think they'll get him.
Jason, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Have at it.
Okay. I'm going to take another offensive lineman. Got to keep building up that offensive line. I'm going to take Casey Poe, who's potentially your center or a guard in this class, not really a tackle. But I'm going to take him. They're out of Lindale, Texas. This is a guy that, you just mentioned Walker White. This is a guy that Walker White has been recruiting maybe the hardest. We've seen Walker White tweet at Casey Poe about 1 million times now. And it's always something clever, creative. I think he went to Texas Tech and had some sort of visit. And, at Texas Tech, there was some guy from The Bachelor or something like that. I don't know. I don't watch The Bachelor. I don't know that situation. I don't know Texas Tech. But Walker White said, I'll order you a dozen roses and I'll have a dramatic commitment ceremony if you choose Auburn. But this is a guy that Walker White obviously wants in front of him. This is a guy that Auburn has prioritized pretty heavily as probably one of its top interior guys. We've already gotten Daniel Calhoun. We've already gotten Fletcher Westphal. So you've got 2 tackles that you feel really good about. And now you've got an inside guy that would help either at guard or at center.
Yeah, I agree. No question they're going to continue to try to make offensive line a priority. Closing out round 6, I'm going to go back to the secondary and look for bigger body, Ricardo Jones from Northside and Warner Robins. I just think he's a guy that gives you a lot of options in what you want to do. And Dukes mentioned earlier, versatility. He's a guy that can play either safety spot, probably a guy that could slide up and play some nickel if you want him to, especially against the more physical teams you play. And so you look at kind of continuing to add to a secondary, especially from a safety group that could have a little movement this year. Obviously, you look at Jalyn Simpson and, you look at him and Zion Puckett. You got some older guys there, potentially some guys that who knows what happens with the rest of this class of the year because there's some depth there. But what you want to do is it's just like an NFL draft. The same thing holds true in college. You want to continue to try to draft people that make you better and that push the other guys and say, look, all right, you got to beat somebody else every year. That's it. And I think Ricardo Jones is a guy that makes you better. And so I feel good about a guy like that adding to the class.
Yeah, I love that pick. We're going to move on to the final round here. I'm going to let Dukes go, then Jason go, and I'm going to close it out because I've got a couple of different sleepers, and I kind of want to see who's left there with the last pick. So, Dukes, I'll let you lead off the final round here.
All right, I'm going to go right back to the secondary, and I'm going to get Jalen Crawford's running mate in the Parkview secondary.
Yep, that's what I was looking at.
Antonio White. Antonio White started out this year with no Division I offers. He's been a guy on the 7-on-7 circuit in the Little League. He's been popular almost his whole life as somebody. They didn't know if he was going to be big enough or how heavy is he going to be, and all he does is continue to make plays. Now he's getting offers at wide receiver. I think when we saw him at Under Armour camp, he worked out as a wide receiver. Auburn offered him as a DB. He's open to playing either one. And I think it's really important to grab both of those guys if you're Auburn. And Parkview probably has the best secondary player in the country in the class of 2026, I believe, in Zealous Hicks. Absolute freak show. And opening up that pipeline to Parkview is going to be super important. We talked about how it could have happened at Langston Hughes, and this year the team with the most talent outside of Buford is probably Parkview. So I'm going to go Antonio White.
I'm going to go back to something Dukes mentioned earlier about guys that want to be there. For me, I don't know that there's anybody that fits the mold more than Malik Blocton does when you look at that. Younger brother of Marcus Harris, the guy that's probably been to Auburn 20 times in the past 3 years since he was a freshman at Pike Road. And I think a guy with a lot of upside. He's just now kind of figuring it out a little bit. And he's one of those guys that's still a young pup on the defensive line. And he's a guy that I feel like is a guy that would build it, would work for it, and continue to get better and go on. And you mentioned culture. I think he's a great culture guy. He's one of those guys I feel like that you always want to have a part of the class if you're Auburn. So I'm going with Malik Blocton.
All right, I'm going to close it out here. I was looking at a couple more offensive linemen actually because we got 3. That's a solid start. Auburn will probably take more than 3, but again, this is just more of an activity. But Auburn does want to take another tight end in this class to pair with Martavius Collins. And there's some good options out there. You know, Carter Nelson's a big name. We've got Colton Heinrich out of Florida. But I'm going to stay in-state, and I'm going to take a sleeper in JaCorey Whitted, who he still has a lot that he needs to put together playing down there at McAdory, if I remember correctly. And he's mostly been playing wide receiver growing up. That's been his position. Just now starting to transition to tight end. But when you look at just what he could bring to that tight end room, it's hard to find someone with a better frame. 6'7", 253 right now. You'd love to have that guy out there catching passes. Very, very athletic. Could bring a lot to that tight end room. You know, Hugh Freeze and Ben Agamawa have had a lot of success with different tight ends. Dawson Knox, Evan Ingram, some other guys. So you get your kind of blocking tight end, your more traditional H-back tight end, and Martavius Collins. And then I don't want to say take a chance on JaCorey Whitted because he is a 4-star tight end. And he's, you know, one of the top 20 tight ends in the country. But you're taking a piece of clay in JaCorey Whitted.
Yes.
And you're hoping to mold him, and you're taking a guy that has an extremely high ceiling. So I'm going to take him there to close out the draft. We had a Google Doc. There's still a ton of good names out here. Like I said at the beginning, this is not Auburn picking. This is us picking kind of for fun, doing a fun activity. These are not even our predictions either. But I thought this was kind of a fun way for us to be able to go through it. Let's recap it again real quick for those that want it. So round 1, Dukes led us off and took Joseph Phillips there at the top of the board. Joseph Phillips might have been the plus 800 odds to be the first overall pick. There's the surprise there at the very beginning, but Dukes surprises everybody with a really good pick. I think it's a pick that Auburn has to win that recruiting battle. Jason takes Cam Coleman, feel the same way. And I don't want to say the launch shot, but I take the big hope for Auburn in being able to flip Perry Thompson from Alabama. Round 2, we had offensive lineman Jamison Riggs, Justin Green on the defensive line, and KJ Bolden there at safety. Round 3, sticking in the secondary, you got Jalyn Crawford, and then you shore up your front 7 a little bit with Demarcus Riddick, the linebacker, and Jordan Ross, the edge rusher. Round 4, you've got your lightning in Kevin Riley to pair with Jamarian Burnett, the Thunder. You've got your big offensive tackle, your probably left tackle of the future, and Daniel Calhoun. And you've got Bradley Shaw there to pair with Demarcus Riddick. Not the last linebacker we'll see, though. Defensive line, you've got Jeremiah Beaman here in round 5. Fletcher Westphal, pair him with Daniel Calhoun. And then you've got an insanely talented wide receiver trio in Mario Craver joining Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. So you've got your slot guy. Last linebacker of the class goes around 6, taking DJ Barber from Clay Chalkville. You go over to Texas, land Casey Poe, the interior offensive lineman, and then you get another piece in the secondary and a pretty big physical safety in Ricardo Jones. And then closing it out in round 7 with kind of the sleeper round there a little bit. Some guys who have some pretty high ceilings, and still you could get a lot out of them. Antonio White, the teammate of Jalyn Crawford there at Parkview, Malik Blocton, younger brother of Marcus Harris, the Pike Road defensive lineman, and then JaCorey Whitted, the in-state tight end from McAdory. So that's the picks. Let's Jason, real quick, kind of your thoughts on just how the draft kind of turned out and what you would think of Auburn's class if this is the class.
I'm going to say that I would say 100% of the people that watch this would say, hey, we'll close it down right now, move on to 2025 and be done. I think you take that in a heartbeat. But, you know, here's what we did. And you're right. There's some you know, obviously you're probably not going to end up with all of these guys, but this is a mixture of, hey, I think Auburn's got a pretty good shot at it, and this is a position of need. And so I think it worked out pretty well, but it does give people an idea of kind of what a class might look like in terms of positions where Auburn wants to go. And so it maybe gives you a little bit of an idea of you know, kind of how the class would shape up in terms of what you're looking for and who are some of the guys that might fill it. So I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Dukes, any kind of final thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, I just think if Auburn closes on 80% of what we pick, I think you got a top 8-ish, top 7-ish class, and that's exactly the type of class that'll get you back towards the front end of the SEC and what Auburn had grown accustomed to. So I think, and I think I do appreciate the way we did it. We got positions where a top 8 class is really a top 8 class, not just stockpiling on certain positions where, you know, you may get the ranking or you may get the political side of the recruiting battles, but you're still having deficiencies in your roster for years to come. So I think if Auburn can, I mean, now I'm not sure if we can do this, but if they would like to buy our draft, contact Ronnie Sanders. No, I'm just kidding. But no, man, no, it was fun, man. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really good. We'll probably do something like this again, maybe change it up a little bit. We were kind of floating some different ideas earlier today about how we wanted to do the podcast. But this worked out well, and I think it gave us some more ideas for the future as well. Guys, if you're still watching this and you're on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe if you're not already. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us out a ton. If you're listening on Google, Apple, Spotify, whatever, and you enjoyed it, definitely leave us a review. This podcast is coming out on Tuesday, April 18th. The significance of that is it's the last day of our sale over at auburnundercover.com for 50% off an annual subscription. If you're already subscribed and you're listening to this and you're on a monthly subscription, you can upgrade to an annual sub and take advantage of that 50% off. So definitely make sure to come check us out over there. We have content on literally every single one of these guys that we just listed. We've had content on them. We're going to continue to have content on them. Jason and I are getting ready to hit the road. Dukes is cooking up a scoops story right now, actually, and should have that pretty soon. So we've had a ton of good stuff. We've had basketball transfer portal content. We've had a ton of great content over there. So definitely make sure to check us out over at auburnundercover.com. Jason, do you have any final thought there?
That's it. That's it. Okay. Like I said, no better time than to sign up right now. If you've thought about it before, this is the perfect time because, hey, the portal is only 2 days old, about a little less than 2 weeks left in this portal period. It's going to heat up, probably beginning, throughout this week and into next week as teams finish spring games. So there's going to be a lot more portal activity, a lot more guys that potentially could be Auburn targets in a portal. So come join us.
Yep, you heard him. All right, we'll close it out there. We'll catch you guys probably later this week for another podcast. What we'll end up talking about is to be determined, but we'll catch you guys on that one.